All right. Welcome. Welcome, everybody, to the Transformed Creative Show. I am so excited today. This is the show where you're going to be able to transform your mindset and break through limiting beliefs to achieve inner harmony and become the greatest you. I'm Shawnee Cotton, violinist, singer, serial entrepreneur, and your host that'll be introducing you to the remarkable experts, sharing their experiences and expertise to help evolve you into become the best you and become the transformed creative that you truly are. So today we have Cary Bayer with us, which is fantastic because he's great. He's helped thousands of people create breakthroughs in virtually every area of life and has worked with Oscar winners Alan Arkin and Pietro Scalia from JFK and Black Hawk Down, Emmy Award winners and comic director David Steinberg, Academy Award presentations, and Judy Henderson from Homeland and Quality Inns. And as a former trainer of teachers of transcendental meditation, he's the founder of Higher Self-Healing Meditation. He's also authored 13 full-length books, including A Course in Money Miracles, Relationships 101, 40 Days to a Happy Life, and Higher Self Meditations. Cary has contributed to a chapter to 27 Flavors of Fulfillment and which was co-written by Alan Cohen, Colin Tipping, Sonia Choquette, and Gangaji, among others, as well as 36 mini books and a dozen CDs and DVDs. He's also appeared on dozens of TV and radio shows, and his writing has run in New Age Journal, Playboy, New York's Daily News, and the San Francisco Chronicle. He also writes a syndicated column called Life 101 that appears in publications throughout the country. So hello, Cary. Thank you so much for being with us today.
My
How are
pleasure.
you?
Good. Listening to that bio, I got tired. I didn't realize
There's so much that you did. It's so wonderful. So many accomplishments. So I'm so excited to get into it.
I always like to tell people that it rained one weekend.
Great, fantastic. So I want to get right into it, Cary, because everything that you've accomplished is so fascinating. I want to know how you got there. We all want to know, and there's so much value that can be added from your story, which I would love to know. So can you actually tell us more about your backstory on how you got into becoming a life coach and meditation teacher?
Sure. Well, I was 17 years of age when I began meditation.
Mm.
Um, and then,
Wow.
we all hear a call. And when you hear the call, it's very wise to respond to it. So, and then over the next 3 years, I studied with a wonderful guru, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi,
Mm.
and trained to become a teacher of his transcendental meditation. And so by the age of 20, I was teaching meditation. And that was about 8 years ago. Well,
Wow.
maybe more than that, actually. Um,
Okay.
it's just kidding. No, I've been teaching meditation for decades, and I took that experience about 8 or 9 years ago, and turned it into marketing, branding my own form of meditation called Higher Self-Healing Meditation. I became a life coach in 2001. I became a full-time life coach,
Okay.
and that's really what I've been doing mostly for the last 18 years now.
Wow, so much experience. That's absolutely great.
The
So
thing
you
is, we're capable of so much. We have within us this infinite source of creative intelligence.
Oh, tell me.
And
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. And meditation helps us contact it, and coaching can help shape our patterns and help transform the limiting belief systems that we have that hold us back from A, being more creative, and B, marketing that creativity.
Oh, that's what the show is all about. I love it. Yes.
That's what I
So,
figured.
can you actually talk more about your journey in terms of
Yeah.
building of higher self-healing meditation? Like, what are some challenges you faced, and how did you manage those challenges?
Well, that's a good question. I was working with the Transcendental Meditation Organization for decades. And at one point, they were charging enormous amount of money to learn, at $2,500 to learn a
Wow.
4-day course. Yeah, and I just didn't feel comfortable doing that. So I knew I had to work in a different way. And so what I did was I took the experience of having trained hundreds of people in meditation, and having trained dozens of teachers of transcendental meditation, and made some adjustments and essentially created higher self-healing meditation based on all those years of experience.
Mm. So it's like you're like, I'm not spending that much money. I'm going to use my experience because you have had over 20 years of that experience to build what you built, your legacy. So that's
Well, you're being very nice. It was more than 20, but that's the exact number. We'll leave that blank. But
okay.
it was decades.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but in terms of the challenges, like how did you internally, did you kind of face any limiting beliefs when it came to that, and how did you kind of navigate those for yourself?
Well, that's a good question. That's not easy to do. It's kind of like almost a little bit like a divorce, really. When you work in an organization and then leave it,
Mm.
it's hard. I mean, emotionally, that was hard. But I'm very dedicated to the teaching itself, and the teaching is really quite wonderful. And I've gained tremendous value from it. And Marishi's a magnificent teacher, and so that really helped to be able to separate the teaching from the organization.
So mentorship, having a mentor. Did you just have one mentor? Did you have multiple mentors at the time that were helping you get through this?
Well,
Time?
I was working with some coaches myself. I mean, as a life coach, I've been, as I said, a full-time life coach since 2001, and I made this change in 2010. So I had been very much exposed to the world of coaching, and so I've been using coaches myself for many years, and they helped me a great deal.
Fantastic. And that's something that we can take away from this as well. Like we all need mentors at no matter what level, even when you're building a legacy and you're like at the top and you've had so many, wonderful, like, uh, so many wonderful accomplishments, So even at that stage when you hit the top, you still need, mentorship
Mhm.
and you're always learning. So
Yeah.
I love
You
that.
know, throughout the ages, kings had advisors, presidents have, cabinet members and aid
Absolutely.
advisors. I mean, nobody is really equipped to do it all by themselves. I mean,
Mhm.
I always like to say, Michael Jordan, who's probably regarded as the greatest basketball player ever, he didn't win a championship until Phil Jackson started coaching him, and Phil Jackson was known
Mm,
as the Zen coach.
true.
So I think there's a lot to be said for uh, the great advantage that occurs when one opens oneself to really good coaching.
Absolutely. And so there was another concept that was in your bio that I absolutely love. So you spoke on transcendental meditation. Now, a lot of our viewers might not know about transcendental meditation. What is transcendental meditation, and how did your experience with it lead to your founding of higher self meditation?
Well, essentially, in the name itself is really the answer. Transcendental means beyond, and meditation means thinking. So, transcendental meditation, like higher self healing meditation, are techniques that allow us to go beyond the thinking process to the source of thinking. At the source of thinking, which is at the very depth of the mind, our own inner being, our higher self, there's tremendous access to creativity. And that's really one of the great gifts of meditation, is that it helps people become more creative. I know when the Beatles were studying with the same teacher that I studied with when they were at his ashram in India in
Oh, wow.
1968,
Hmm.
that was some years before you hit the planet, I'm assuming. Uh, they uh,
Great.
they said that they had more inspiration during that 6 weeks they spent with him than at any other time in their work together as a band. So,
Wow.
meditation quiets the mind, and as the mind gets quieter and quieter, it gets closer to our creative source, and all kinds of creative ideas come as a result.
Yeah, and a lot of, especially creative types, I'm sure, a lot of people know about meditation, and meditate in their daily routines. Um, for transcendental meditation, could you give us some specific examples? Like I know you were mentioning there's multiple methods of of reaching the higher self and connecting to source, God, whatever, you believe in, whatever you want to call it. But could you give some kind of specific techniques? Because there's so many different things out there, so many different ways to meditate, and it's all good. But what are some of your favorites, kind of like specific strategies that our viewers can actually use? Like right now, if we get off
Yeah.
this call, and people are feeling stressed out, what can I do right now? And do I lay down? Do I sit up? What are some
Sure.
of your favorites?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, my answer to that is going to be unsatisfactory for you because
Hmm.
it takes a few hours to learn the technique that I teach, and we only have 45 minutes here today. So, unfortunately, that's not going to work. But
Mm.
essentially, it's mantra based, and the thing that's interesting is that it's effortless, and that's the part that most people find most hard to really fathom because in life we usually have to study pretty hard to learn something. And in this case, and I mean, as a life coach, you're trained, for example. Uh, but in this case, meditation involves doing less and less and less until we're really doing nothing. We're just being. And so the difficulty that most meditations face, and the difficulty most people who have meditated face, is that they find it very difficult to block out thoughts, and they find it hard to concentrate and to control their minds. And that's because the mind doesn't need to be concentrated on or controlled. When you go to sleep at night, you just let go and you go from waking to sleeping, and it happens naturally. The higher power, or whatever word you're comfortable with, allows that transition to occur in a very natural way. All you do really is set up
See.
an initial, that's right. You just set up an initial condition. You lay down, you put your head on a pillow, you turn the light out, and a natural process of transitioning your consciousness occurs. Transcendental meditation and also higher self-healing meditation work in the same way. They allow a natural process to go, in this case, to go from the waking state to the fourth state of consciousness, which is known as, by many names, transcendental consciousness, pure consciousness, the state of your higher self, state of being, samadhi, as they say in India. And it's it's more deeply rested than sleep and more highly awake than in waking. It's a tremendous reserve of energy, vitality, creativity. It gets rid of a tremendous amount of stress. So it's really a valuable tool for any person working in the creative arena.
Oh, love it. Yeah. And this really resonates with me personally. I mean, I spend probably 2 hours every day at least, in meditation, first thing when
Good,
the doorway to the subconscious opens in the morning and last thing at night. So
good,
that's
good.
so useful to people,
Yes, it
especially
is.
when you want to, access your creative faculties, mental faculties. So thanks for that so much.
Sure,
And
sure.
your books too, they really run the full gamut of learning how to live a fulfilling life on all levels: financially, relationally, intellectually, physically, and spiritually. Can you talk about your creative process and journey in writing 13 full-length books? That's just amazing. It's a 13, full length. What an amazing feat. And a lot of creative entrepreneurs and the high achievers, I feel, struggle with time management and have so many ideas, on what they'd like to create. Writing full-length books and building different types of businesses could be part of that creation. So how did you navigate your time and energy to create such impactful material?
It's a great question. You're doing a very, very good interview here, I must say.
Thanks so much. I'm so
Good.
fascinated by your story. I want to learn
Yeah,
as
yeah,
much
that's
as
great. Well, you have a natural enthusiasm, which is wonderful. Enthusiasm, by the way, is one of the real secrets to success in anything you do,
possible.
and creativity as well. I mean, in my case, I allot a minimum of a half an hour every day to write, a minimum, and that discipline has helped me in numerous ways. I'll give you some examples. Number one, by showing up at the computer. My belief is that, in the ancient Greeks talked about the muses. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept, but the idea that there is inspiring being, so to speak. I'm just going to use that metaphorically. I'm not sure that they exist per se, but it's been out there, so I'll use that language. So I believe that when you show up, it's like the muses say, I can count on Cary. I know he's going to show up. Let's give him some ideas.
So I'll
Yeah.
give you the gift.
Oh, say that again?
They'll give you the gift when you show up.
Well, yeah, you know, it's like, remember that expression from Field of Dreams, if you build it, they'll come? You
Yeah,
know, if you show up, um, I think there's a greater chance that the ideas will be given. Too many people, even creative people, don't do anything with the ideas they're given. And I think that's a real great loss
it's very
because,
true.
yeah, because think about it in your own case. Imagine you gave really good advice to someone
Hmm.
and they didn't take it. And then they asked you the next day for advice and you gave them that advice and they didn't take it. And they keep doing this. After a while, you're going to say to yourself, well, what's the point? Why pass this along? They're not going to do anything with it. So I think number one, showing up is really key. And then, uh, in
How do you
addition
show
to,
up? Like mentally? Like,
no,
what does that
physically,
look like?
physically. I mean, like, okay, so uh, let's say, okay, tonight I haven't written yet today, so I'm 3 hours later than you, so I still have an evening. So at some point this evening, I will spend a minimum of 30 minutes.
Mm,
Often it's more, but by showing up, I can keep working on, in this case, the particular novel that I'm working on.
nice.
Now, so that's one thing. The second thing is that not only are more ideas showing up, but better, in my opinion, better writing is showing up as well.
Really?
And
So fascinating.
and when you have all this stuff coming out, then it's only a matter of time before you say, well, it's time to start marketing this and start, getting this writing published, for example.
Mm,
I'll tell you another thing that happened, and this happened, in my opinion, as a result, indirectly, of the commitment to write every day, and that is, I stumbled upon, I wasn't even looking for it, a writers group that meets just about 15 minutes from where I live in South Florida.
wow.
Seven other really wonderful and talented writers, and they had one space left, and there I was. I showed up, and they, yeah. And I think that's not a coincidence. I really don't think it's a coincidence.
Yeah, things just start showing up. I have a very real question connected with that. You
Yeah.
just and I'm sure people can relate to this. Like when you start writing, there's a lot of people, the writer's block and all these different types of things. You're saying show up and things will come, but what about in the case when you start, your limiting beliefs, disempowering beliefs start coming because like, oh my gosh, 30 minutes has gone by and I haven't
Right.
created
Great question.
anything basically.
Great question.
So
Yeah.
how do you navigate that? Because sometimes people think, oh, if I procrastinate, that's when the creativity will come, and it'll just come when I'm pressured, or we tell ourselves these stories and procrastinate the creativity. Because sometimes in those moments, the feeling of not creating what we would have liked to in that 30-minute slot, say that we committed to show up, it doesn't happen. So
Yeah.
how
Great
do you
question.
navigate that?
That's a great question. And so, I mean, that hasn't been my problem, but some people might find that. And so, one of the techniques that I teach a class on creativity, and one of the techniques I teach is a kind of automatic writing. And by that I mean, you basically keep your finger. If you're going to do it on the computer, you keep your fingers moving on the keyboard, or if you're using a pen and paper, you just keep your pen moving. So, for example, um, let's say I was writing a novel about a violist who also was a singer, who was doing a summit on creativity, just as a thought, just, a concept.
Thanks for
A,
picking out that. Yes, violinist. Let's change that to that.
oh, violinist. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Got to get my ears checked a little better. So, okay. So, all right. So let's say I don't know. Let's say I'm stuck. I'm on chapter 3, and I don't know more what to say.
Mhm.
So what I would do then is I would go on my. I find it easy just to work with the computer than with pen and paper. So I start working. Okay. So for 10 minutes, I will keep my fingers moving about this subject, even if I don't know what to say. So, for example, I would probably ask questions. So, what is it that I don't know about this violinist? Where was she born? I'm not sure where she was born. Okay, well, maybe she was born in so and so. And what was her birth like? Were there problems at her birth? I mean, I start to ask these questions,
Yeah.
and then the character starts to reveal herself more to me. So at the end of the 10 minutes, I've asked a lot of questions, and in most cases, I've gotten some answers. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to use any of that. But by engaging myself in that manner, what happens is when you keep the fingers moving, you shut down the editing function and you open up, and you also shut down the rational function, and you open up more of a pathway between the conscious part of your mind and your creative source.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and as a result, things start to open up. As a writer, I discover more things about the characters that I didn't know by doing that technique. In fact, it's a wonderful technique to do even before you sit for those 30 minutes.
So kind of like a priming. That's
That's
such a
exactly
wonderful
right.
technique.
That's exactly right. It's like a stretching before a warm-up. It's like a stretching.
Yeah, that's great.
Warming up the creative muscles.
And that's so helpful too, because it's so valuable, because not only does it, I feel, prime you and get the muscles going and warmed up like a workout, but afterward, I mean, it's really kind of getting you confident and getting the wheels rolling, that you kind of gain momentum, and then, it keeps going.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
snowballs. So that's great. That's fantastic. Thanks for that. So many people, I'm going to find so much value with that. Use it like right after this.
Yes,
So,
yes.
also, what are your thoughts on how to create lasting change, Cary? Like,
Mm.
um, for someone who has tried over and over again, but still hasn't been able to achieve consistent change, in an important area of his or her life.
Now, are you referring to inner change, or are you talking about outer change? What are we referring to?
Let's go ahead and say that there's, like, let's say I want to incorporate, let's say, for instance, someone wants to incorporate more musical practice into their craft, into a day, and change, on some level specifically. That's on the outside, but obviously you have to do some inner work, I would say, in order to make that habitual.
Now, when you say musical practice, you mean literally practicing with the instrument?
No, I would say change. Like, yeah, like, let's say a consistent change. Like, I'm going to incorporate this discipline this amount of time per day on a daily basis.
Yeah, sure. So most people have resistance to discipline.
Yes.
If that wasn't the case, there wouldn't be a Weight Watchers. There wouldn't be Jenny Craig, for example. Okay, most people do not like discipline, and yet it's really interesting. The word discipline and the word disciple are linked. A disciple, who is a spiritual aspirant, practices a discipline to become free. So the truth is that discipline actually creates freedom, which looks ironic, but not really. Because if you want to be a better musician, obviously you need to hone your skills. And the best way to hone your skills is practice. There's an old joke in New York City. I grew up in New York City, small town, New York. And there's an old joke where somebody, a visitor to New York, says, he's like in Midtown. He says, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? And the New Yorker, who's hard boiled, says, practice, practice, practice.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah. So the thing is that, so for example, if the idea of disciplining yourself to practice your instrument feels difficult, then attitude adjustments can really help. And one of the best ways to adjust your attitude, I've discovered, is affirmation work.
Mm-hmm.
Affirmation work is a wonderful tool to shift how you see something. And when you shift how you see something, you can shift how you do something. So, for example, if the feeling is that it's difficult to practice every day, introducing an idea like, something like, I now discover how easy and joyful it is to play my instrument.
Reframing it, yeah.
Exactly. It reframes it from a chore to joy.
And to something you choose. Yeah.
Something you choose to do. Exactly. Now, the difficulty that most people have with affirmation work is that they just repeat a thought over and over again, and it has some value. But I'll share with you a way of using affirmation that goes much deeper and is more effective than just repeating it. So let's say the affirmation is, I now discover how easy and joyful it is for me to play my instrument. Okay. So what's going to happen is I suggest, I call this the ABCs of inner transformation. So next to that thought or that affirmation, you'd write A. Okay, it's the first step. The next step is B. And what will happen is there'll be some limiting voice inside your mind that disagrees with that affirmation, right?
Yeah.
So does one show up in your mind?
Let's see what getting tired soon.
Okay.
How long am I actually gonna play?
Okay.
Because
So
I
maybe it's
once
like,
I start, I know I'll just keep going, and I can't do that because I need to do other things.
right.
For example.
So, okay, so playing instrument, I don't have the time, and playing my instrument makes me tired.
Mhm.
Is that the idea? Yeah.
After a long amount of time, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. So that is what I'm calling your lower self's reaction to the affirmation. The affirmation is like a seed. You know, you plant the seed in the ground, but the seed needs fertile soil, or else nothing's going to happen. If you plant the seed on rocky soil, it's not going to. Nothing's going to take.
Oh,
You
God,
know.
yeah.
So you need to remove the rocks. Well, like that, we need to let go and transform the limiting thoughts that surfaced. So in your case, it was about tiredness and time. So then we take a third step, the C step. And the C step is your higher self's reaction to what your lower self kind of rejected the affirmation with. Okay, so a good one in this case could be something like, let's say, it could be something like, when I monitor my time
Mm.
consciously, I can hone my talent, enjoy my instrument, and have plenty of time for all the other things in my life.
I love it. Yeah.
Mhm. So
Oh,
we're simply balancing it so that we're not overdoing it. You know,
mm.
it's funny. It's funny. Some people don't want to. Let's say they don't want to practice, but then when they start practicing, they do it for so long that creates a problem in their schedule. Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's not, life isn't, black or white. It's all, there's gray everywhere. And
Mhm.
so it's just learning the boundaries and creating appropriate boundaries. So in my case, yeah, I love to write too, but I don't spend 6 hours doing it because I have coaching clients to, and meditation students to teach and so forth. So I create a certain boundary around it so that I get it done, but it doesn't impede with my other commitments.
Right, right. Oh, so helpful. I love that. I love that strategy.
Thank you.
Great. I want to know too, Carrie, what is your daily routine? I'm just curious. And how do you find the time in your busy schedule to optimize your life on a daily basis?
Oh, that's a great question. You've done your homework well. So I have, for example, the first thing I do after I wake up and wash up is I sit to meditate. And I've been doing that twice a day since I'm 17 years of age. I've missed, I
Wow,
think, 3 or 4 meditations over that period of time.
that's so fascinating.
So that's the first thing, and that takes about 45 minutes. The technique I teach takes 20 minutes, but I've been doing it so long that I have some advanced techniques in there as well.
Mhm.
And then it depends on the day. I mean, I've been self-employed since a long time, 1984. And so one day it might be like this morning. I had an early client, a coaching client. So that's what happened. Some days I go and play tennis for 2 hours because I love to do that. I
Mm.
live right on the ocean here, so some days I'll just go to the beach, and that's nice too. And other days I'll write, and other days I'll teach a meditation class. So it really varies on a day by day basis, and that's one of the things that's really great about um, when you own your own business, you really have the opportunity to adjust your schedule in infinite ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm.
Great. And are you usually going to bed earlier and getting up super early? What are your thoughts on that? Do you
Well,
are
that's a
you
great
of
question.
the are you of the opinion that you get most of your best work done early in the morning, or are you as a creative type going to bed super late to access the most melatonin when you're doing your meditations, so you
Great question.
can
That's a great question.
access your subconscious more?
Yeah. Ideally, I find it's best to go to bed at 10, but I have to confess, I often watch Trevor Noah on The Daily Show. He's
Gotcha.
brilliant. And I also watch Stephen Colbert's monologue.
Yeah.
So I usually get into bed around about quarter to 12. But it's really helpful, and I fall asleep really right away, so that's really good. So it's really good to be asleep before midnight. You
Do
get
you
an
do
extra.
meditations before, right before bed,
I
or
do
are you
not.
doing
No,
them in the
no.
morning?
Yes, I do it.
First thing,
Do
like
it
you said.
first thing in the morning and about 6 to 10 hours later. The meditation that I teach helps give you more energy, so it's not advisable to do it before bed. It's often will be.
I got you. Oh, that's great. Thanks for
But it's
that.
a really great question you're asking, though, because a lot of people stay up to like 3, 4 in the morning. I've had some clients like
Trying
that,
to get
and
access to their higher
yeah,
self.
yeah. Well, you're running against nature at that point,
Yeah.
because nature's asleep then. And if you're awake when nature's asleep, and when you're asleep, and you're asleep when nature's awake,
Mhm.
you're fighting. You're sort of swimming upstream.
I see. So in a sense, you think you're making it easier for yourself to open, what do you say, the gates, but it's actually making it harder. So that's interesting. So nature's sleeping. Is there
You
is
know, in
there
India, the yogis say that the best hours to meditate, and also really, um, is between 4 and 7 in the morning, because
more
at those hours, yeah, those hours is when nature's waking up, and there's quietness in the world, and that's the best time for the mind to go deep within. But it's also a great time for the mind to create. I'm not suggesting to anyone who's listening now start getting it before. I did that once, by the way. I was I was a college freshman. I'd learned to meditate, and I had read about this, and so I used to get up at 4:30 in the morning.
Wow.
College freshman. So I remember one morning, I got up at 4:30. I went to, washed up, and then started to do some yoga like quarter to 5. And one of my roommates, because we had about, it was college, is about, I don't know, about 6 people lived in the house. He was just coming home from a party Saturday night, Sunday morning, and I was starting my yoga. So I don't recommend that people necessarily do that, but there is a lot of advantage
Mhm.
to creating when the universe is most supportive.
That's very interesting. Yeah, keep that in mind because I actually, for me personally, do it both times. But if there's another time that's better, that definitely would love to
Yeah.
access that.
As the sun is starting to rise, but even prior to that, the birds. If you're ever up at that hour, it's a beautiful time, and
Mhm.
you're on the ocean. I really appreciate it, because you see the sun starting to rise and the birds are starting to do their thing, and all of nature's starting to wake up. And in that purity of vibration, there's a lot of advantage for the creative person.
Such freshness.
Yeah,
Hey,
exactly.
what a good way to start the day.
Exactly. Freshness. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And then I just want to ask you real quickly too, what's something you're excited about in your business right now?
I would say writing more books. That's the thing that most excites me these days. Yeah, really.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
lastly, finally, how can our fellow creatives find you and your tools and resources that can help them transform their minds and lives?
No, that's great. My website is very simple. It's carybayer.com. I'll spell that because uh, one typo and you don't find me. So it's CaryBayer.com. Yeah, and was there another question that you asked about that?
Yeah, just no. Just so that they're able to find your tools and resources so that they can transform their minds and
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, anybody who signs up on my website to get my newsletter gets a free half-hour coaching session too. So
oh,
that's
that's great. So yes, we're providing that to our viewers free. So that's
yeah,
amazing. Thanks for
sure,
that. So
sure.
grateful. All right. Well, Carrie,
Can
it's
I
been
share
such a
one more thing?
pleasure.
Can I share one more little quick
Yeah,
thing?
absolutely.
Okay.
Please.
Years ago, I was my creativity was showing up as in comedy, and I used to write comedy. I used to write for the National Lampoon, which is not with us anymore, but was a fantastic humor magazine in its day. And I went to a comedy writing seminar that was led by Neil Simon. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Neil Simon, but he
Mhm.
was probably the best comic playwright of the 20th century. He wrote things like The Odd Couple and probably the most well-known piece of Google Neil Simon. You'll see there's a Broadway theater named after him in New York.
Mhm.
Anyway, so I said to him, I was lucky to get a question, and I said, Mr. Simon, what should I do? I'm in New York here. Is the next step for me to become a successful comedy writer, would that be to move to Los Angeles? And he said, oh, okay, well, then my answer for you would be to write. And I said, well, I do write. I write for the National Lampoon and I write for some disc jockeys, but what would be the next? Should I get an agent? Would that be the next best thing for me to do? He said, oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. Then my answer would be to write. I said, well,
Oh, wow.
I said, I do write, but I mean, should I write a screenplay? Or should
But
I write
wait, do
a
you get
song?
it?
What should I do to really advance my career? He says, oh, I'm so sorry. Well, then my answer would be to write.
Mm. Do your
So
damn thing. Do your craft.
keep doing it. If you keep doing it, it will get better. And when you, and the more, as I said earlier, the more you show up, the better the ideas will be, the better your work will be, and the more you'll have to put into the marketplace.
Oh, I love that so much. Thanks so much. You've
My
so
pleasure.
much value in that. Thank you for being on the show with us today, Cary.
My pleasure.
And
You're a wonderful interviewer. I've been interviewed
oh,
many, many times.
thank you so much.
You're very
Thank
well researched, and you're very, very good.
I'm so grateful for you to say that. So thanks for being here with us, and thank you everyone for watching. I'm sure you've had so many nuggets, gold nuggets, diamonds that you've taken away from this interview. And thanks for watching. Keep creatively thriving, and we will see you next time. Bye.